The heroin crisis is looming large in Clermont County, and we have seen a lot of death and pain and suffering from this crisis. And some of the participants from Solace are here to share their experience with this disaster that's happening in our county. So each person's going to go and introduce the person that they lost, themselves and the person that they lost.
My name's Rob Graves, and I was born same house that I live in. I've been there since I was 6 years old, raised my family there, and the boys were, typical family. We did all the things family do. Went to church and played baseball and football and did all the right things, and then they got into this terrible drug, and I ended up. My first loss was my grandson. A girl he was 3 weeks before his 4th birthday. He had gotten killed by a girl who'd been on a cocaine binge for about 3 days and ran a stop sign and hit him head on and killed him. And that was my oldest son's son, and that drove him into depression and heroin, and he had already been into pain pills because of a wreck that him and my younger son had been in. He'd been prescribed pain pills, and so they had been abusing those, I guess. I didn't know it at the time, or didn't want to know it, and so about 4 years later, Matt, my oldest son, heroin, with the help of heroin and 38, he killed himself. And then that was on February 16th. And then the next year, 2 days, February 19th, I found my youngest son, Bobby, lying naked on the bathroom floor from an overdose of heroin. So, and it just, you just lose so much. And that's just the tip of what losses you have. You have losses. My wife, 35 years left. She couldn't handle the pain no more, so she left. So, and then it's just like a big avalanche. It starts everything. So that's why I'm here.
And my name's Donna Dowdney, and I have my youngest son, Ryan Tarvin, developed a addiction for pain pills, which eventually led to heroin. And I'm not unlike Rob and the rest of us here. We had pretty much a normal family life. Dad was a policeman, I was a nurse. Kids were raised in a small community. Ryan was a baseball star, basketball player, football player, had it all. And unfortunately, his father and I divorced, and someone handed him a joint of marijuana, said, try this, it won't hurt so much. And that's kind of, in my opinion, how the substance abuse started. It progressed to pain pills after a lengthy hand surgery, which required lengthy recovery and rehab, and he was kept on one too many Vicodin for one too many days too long, and it eventually developed into a full-blown addiction, which, as they all do it takes him down to the road to heroin. And unfortunately, I lost my son. Sweet guy. He battled this for about 8 years. I just lost him in October, and it came without warning. He was doing really well. He had about 20 months and 14 days of sobriety. He was a leader in the recovery community. He was a house manager of a sober living facility. Ryan and I worked together with the members of Solace. We helped place young people into recovery situations. He served as a mentor to these young people, and he was doing good things. And then one night in October, nobody saw it coming. Friends, family, none of us. He slipped, and it was a relapse that ended in death. And changes your life forever, and it's a nightmare that no parent should ever have to experience.
My name is Beth Bullock, and like Rob and Donna, our son was just a typical kid. He played baseball and football, and he liked to hunt and fish, and that's everybody in our family, even the daughter, hunts and fishes and outdoorsy. Somewhere along the line, I think his emotional issues and some different things just got the best of him, and then being a typical teenager, started messing around with marijuana and alcohol. And for him, it took some pain away. And I know that it just progressed from there over the next 10 years, from pills and prescription pills and just whatever he could get his hands on to just ease the pain of the emotional issues that he was going through. And after a back surgery, when he was in the military in Maryland, he was given Percocet. And then from that, it just developed from Percocet on into somebody said, here, snort this. It's what he thought was a crushed up Percocet that it'll work faster. It'll ease your pain faster. And when he told me at one point that what he'd done, he just said, oh gosh, Mom, it was just like nothing I'd ever done before. But he said, now it's killing me and I can't stop. So, I mean, this went on for a couple of years with heroin. We had him arrested on June 8th of 2014, thinking that, well, we have to do something. We either have to put him in jail or we're going to lose him. So we put him in jail. He went to a facility down in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was a really good place for him. He was doing really well. Was there 28 days, came home, and within 48 hours of coming home, his wife found him from an overdose.
My name's Danielle McNeil. My story is a little different. I actually lost my husband. We both grew up in decent homes, no drug use. Neither of our parents were alcoholics. Neither of our parents were drug addicts. I actually have never seen my mom or dad actually ever drink a beer or smoke a cigarette or anything. Before I lost my husband, I lost a couple of my friends to overdoses. But me and Kevin, I'm actually a recovering addict too. We had both went to treatment, and we had gotten out. Well, I got out the day before he did, and I couldn't find him, and he had overdosed that day, and somebody had managed to bring him back. And then he had moved out of my house and he was living with his friends. He was living up in Hamilton with some people that he was in treatment with for a couple months, and he had told me he wasn't using. Well, I knew that was a lie because I just knew when he was using. He managed to move back down here in February of 2013. He moved in with his friend. I talked to him on a Friday in July, and he had asked me if he was ever going to be able to come back home to live with me and his daughter and his son, and I had told him no because he was going to continue to use. That Sunday, somebody called me and said that they seen that he had passed away on Facebook, so I started to call his phone. And there was no answer, and I repeatedly called and called and called, and it just kept going to voicemail. And about 2 hours later, I went home and I called his mom, and she had a note on her door telling her to call the police. But before she could even do that, she had got texts saying that her son passed away before she was even able to know exactly what had happened.
Wow.
People were already calling her and telling her, they were sorry for her loss, and she had no idea that he was even gone. And so she called the police department, and they had told her that he had passed away of an overdose. His friends had left him laying there for 15 hours. After they knew he was overdosed, they left and then came back and finally called the police at 3 o'clock. He had overdosed sometime in the middle of the night, probably about 1 o'clock, they said. So They didn't call the police till 3 o'clock the next day. So his face was completely black when I had to have the funeral for my daughter and for our family. But, I mean, growing up, he played basketball. He was on the honor roll. I mean, he was a good kid. You know, I didn't do anything. I mean, we experimented with drugs, but it was nothing to the extent of what it ended up. But he actually died on 5 days before his birthday. We planned his funeral on his birthday. He would have been 29 years old.
You know, Ohio does not have a Good Samaritan law. That is where if someone is overdosing, you can get them help without getting yourself arrested or in trouble. What's your opinion about that Good Samaritan law?
Do they have that in Columbus, or is it just statewide?
Statewide,
They don't have
we
it.
don't have it.
It
You're not
passed
protected.
something. It passed the first round I saw on the news
Yeah, but
today.
it didn't get enacted. Yeah.
I think there'd be some kids alive. I know a friend of mine, his son, they brought him home and dropped him off too. I mean, you know, if you could take somebody to the hospital and not be afraid of the repercussions of it, or you know, being hassled about where you've been and what you're doing, just give the information that you need to give and leave, you know.
I think it would be a good thing. You know, in our situation, it wouldn't have applied because he was by himself. And by the time that my daughter-in-law came home and found him, he'd been gone for a couple of hours at least, from what we're told. But I know other families that we know personally that have had that situation, that where their child was dropped off at an emergency room or dropped off somewhere else, and wait for somebody to find him outside the door. And at that point, I mean, time is of the essence. You only have so much time. And I think it would be a good thing to have.
The stigma around heroin addiction, the community doesn't really understand very well what addiction is, or certainly the heroin crisis, but it makes the grieving process for your loss more complicated.
I think the stigma of the disease is a problem all the way around. It's a barrier to people asking for help and getting treatment. Addicts and families suffer alone and in silence. I can remember it was years before I could even admit that my son had a substance abuse problem. And now that's why some of us have come out. It's all around us. It's the boy next door. It's the prom king. It's the high school football star. It's the doctor. It's the nurse, the pharmacist. This disease affects all walks of life, all ages, from the teens to the 80-year-olds. And we have to reduce the stigma. These people are human beings. They are God's people, and they deserve the right to treatment and love and respect as well as any one of us.
You know, and I got to say that I'm really upset with the fathers, and you know, these girls can tell you that there's not very many fathers that do it. And as a father, I mean, I said the same things too. You know, that hey, just get off of it, and you know, and that's just ignorance of what the drug really is. But we as fathers tell everybody that, you know, hey, our boy hit a home run or scored a touchdown, or our daughter, you know, got grand champion at the 4-H showing horses, or whatever. But we do not talk about our sons shooting dope and the problems that they have with each other. And we leave all of that as fathers and husbands. We leave all of that to our wives, and I think it's just it just needs to change. Fathers need to step up and you know, take some responsibility and talk to your kids, and instead of going to work and you know, worrying about all of that, you just need to worry about your families too, you know, and check on them. Make sure they're doing the right things.
And when you're an addict, it's almost like people don't see, they only look at all the bad stuff that you do. They don't look at like all the good stuff that you have done. It's just like they want to point out and just focus on all of the bad stuff. Like that, just your using part. They don't want to, you know, focus on the good things that you've done, or when you were a kid and stuff. It's all they see is you're a junkie, you're an addict, you're, you know, you're this horrible person, when that's not what it is. And that's,
I think a part of that, though, is there's a lot of lack of education. And people do not want to be educated about this disease. A lot of people do not believe it's a disease.
Right.
But anything that takes your brain and holds it hostage and changes who you are is pretty powerful enemy.
I've had numerous people tell me it's all about willpower. You know, it's just willpower. You can stop if you want it to, and no, it's not. Like, that's not that easy. It's, you know, there's plenty of times, you know, that I wanted to stop, or I'm sure Kevin wanted to stop, you know, and it's not that easy. It's not, you just can't be like, oh, I'm just gonna stop using today because I want to. No, it's miserable. It's a horrible, horrible thing. It's horrible.
Sometimes there are barriers to getting, going forward in that. I know it used to be you could check yourself, go into an emergency room and say, if you go in and say, I want to quit, that there's no plan there to check yourself into. There's no way to get help. And it's even extended to the point where if you say, I'm going to take my life, which
Right.
used to be automatic, getting you checked in
3
for at
days.
least a day of relief,
Right.
that's gone.
Right. And that stays with you too. So, and my sons went through the same thing. They would go, you know, they would get in bad shape, and but the only way that they could get into any kind of treatment was going to the hospital and say, I feel suicidal. And they'd, you know, it's 3 days, you know.
Well, in Claremont County, there's this lack of detox facilities, and there's only there's only one residential treatment center, and there's a couple intensive outpatient treatment centers, but there's certainly not enough resources, and the resources aren't available, in my opinion, in a real timely manner. The wait lists are so long.
And it's because people are scared. They're scared to build rehab centers over here and stuff because that means there's drugs in their community. Well, they're already here.
They're here.
They're here.
Yeah, and that's what they don't.
Yeah.
They think that if they build rehab centers, that there's going to be stealing and like all this crime and all this stuff. It's already here. It's
Right.
here. So why not fix it instead of just, oh no, we don't want it here because it's going to bring all these problems with it. Well, the problems are already here. You just don't want to see them.
Right.
No, and
exactly.
the problem that we have is when we do bring somebody home, like Robbie came home after his third rehab, and that Sunday night on the front porch, he said, Mom, I'm an addict, and if it's in front of me, I'm going to use it. I have to be somewhere where I can't get to it. And, you know, in between that time, there has to be another place that we can take them because they're so vulnerable. They're so vulnerable. And, you know, we talk about the stigma, and I'm sure all of you have seen it too. There is such a disconnect in our community about what addiction is and how to handle addiction. And I have to be honest, I'm to the point where the people who don't want to see it as a disease and the people who want to say it's their choice, they're the ones choosing to do this, I don't even want to have a coherent conversation with those people anymore because they have no idea what they're talking about. And it gets me really angry because there is
Wow.
such a need, and there is until people stop having that idea in their head about it, they need to realize that all they're doing is inhibiting somebody. They're just keeping people quiet and keeping people from wanting to speak up because somebody's going to shoot them down. Oh, it's not a disease. You're just saying that. You're enabling them. And that is just not it. We need to be able to get the conversation past the debate of whether or not this is a disease. It is a disease, whether you choose to believe it or not. It still is a disease.
What is the problem with Claremont County and not having any recovery houses?
There's zoning issues, a lot of zoning.
Zoning
And funding.
And funding.
And
and funding.
Yes. So the funding for the mental health board, so the state part of the funding, their total funding was around 18 million in around 2006, but the part that comes from the taxes we pay to the state was around 13, and over the course we went from 0 heroin deaths to 53, 2013. That 13 million dropped down to 8.1. So they are the people that provide those resources. And all of a sudden, the taxes we're paying don't come back to pay for the services for which we're being taxed. So,
But aren't sober living houses, I thought they were privately owned
Some are.
and some's not.
so they still need a subsidy, and you also, to get invested, you have to have, some confidence you're going to be able to fund it year
Right.
after year after year. This is just all over the place and going down. So when you lose someone, managing birthdays and holidays are really something you need to prepare for, because it changes. Those are really difficult days and events.
I shared with you the other day, the happiest time of my life was February 14th when my daughter was born, my oldest child. And 2 days later, on February 16th, my oldest son killed himself. And then on the 19th, my youngest son died. So I go from the happiest time to the most tragic time. And we talked about skipping over it. We talked about, my daughter and I talked about, let's just change when we celebrate our birthdays. Because her, it's just, so it's changed. And I said, no. We tried it for a year. And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to let this control the happiest time of my life. I just can't do it. Can't do it. But it's tough getting through Christmases and holidays. But, and some of us haven't reached that yet, But
I think for me, it's been the days leading up to those days have been the hardest for me than the actual day. Robbie died on August 5th of 2014. The next, I guess, family event was my birthday in September. Well, the year prior to that, he and I had had quite a day on my birthday because we had some heated discussions between here and Maryland about some things, and and we had a really long, very long phone conversation that night that ended well. And that's, to me, that's just kind of it was just another mark of thinking of that day. Christmas was hard because there was still, when you have 4 kids and you're buying Christmas for all these kids all these years, and then all of a sudden you don't have that kid to buy for this year. And I always keep my list in a little book that I carry with me at Christmas time, so I can look back at last year and make sure I'm not duplicating something, to the next year. And his page was there from the year before. So that, for me, that's hard. The days leading up to the day, I think, are some of the hardest. Just the anticipation of that day.
I still actually, like for Kevin, because we have a daughter, so I have a child to think about. We still, for his birthday, we get lanterns and we light them off, and I still get him a birthday cake, and we still, we light candles and we blow out candles, and she still gets him a present. She still gets him a present on Father's Day, because we were walking through Target one day, and it was around Father's Day, and all these people were buying Father's Day gifts, and she looked at me and said, I don't have a daddy to buy a Father's Day gift for. And that, I had to explain to her, you still have a daddy. Just because he passed away doesn't mean that you don't have a daddy. You still have one. He's just up in heaven now. But I think it's important for me to do that for her. We still, like on Christmas, she gets him a gift still, and I try and just make him as much of a part of our life still as if he was alive.
But you're memorializing him, and that's
Yeah.
important. That's part of grieving and part of healing, and that's important.
Well, in my case, as I said earlier, my son just passed away in October of 2015. And we've just made it through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Mother's Day was a killer. But what I've tend to do is I keep in my little kitchen area. There's a dining room area, and I have a table, and I keep his pictures out there. And he always bought me flower vases, and so on special days I get his flower vase out, and I put a fresh flower in it, and I light a candle, and we sit down to dinner, and that's how we keep him with us.
You know, and you were talking about your daughter. You know, when Matt's got a daughter too, and you know, she asked me, her mother, you know, she's moving on with her life, and everybody moves on, and so Maddie asked me. She said, "Papa," she said, "do you think that Daddy would be upset if I got another daddy?" And I said, "No, Maddie. No, he'd be happy because he wants you to be happy."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's the tough questions that them little kids ask you that are rough. You know, it really is.
It is. And the older they get, it seems like it gets, because when they're younger, it doesn't really sit in. Like it registers, but it doesn't register. And the older they get, the more they start to understand and realize, you know, like I don't have my dad. He's not going to be here for my graduation. He's not going to be here to give me away at my wedding. He's not going to be here when I graduate college and move into, you know, my first apartment, or just all them big milestones in her life that she's going to have. He's not going to be there for her. And they start to realize that the older that they get. And, you know, I do have a boyfriend, and Joey's been with her, and he's good to her, and she loves him, and she has my dad. She has other male figures in her life that, you know, kind of compensate for Kevin being gone, but it's still to a child, you know, that's that void that can never really be filled. It's just they're gonna miss certain things in their life, and it's sad to watch a child grieve. Like, I know I grieve, but to watch my child grieve is probably the worst part of it.
And I think about what they miss too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what Matt and Bobby, what they really miss. You know, and you think about that a lot.
We had talked about different ways of grieving. That the grief can kind of be something that it happens to you. You don't manage it, and that can take real extremes. So some people manage their grief experience is just escape, get away from, and the other is immersion. What was your grief experience has been like?
For me, it was, it was tough in the beginning, but a friend had turned me on to he had lost his daughter, and he turned me on to a fellow by the name of Mike Strick, who runs Crossroads Hospice. It's their grieving program, and I talked with Mike, and I went through the program, and it's a 12-week program, and it really helped me a lot. But also, I went to Survivors of Suicide. I tried different groups. I went to Survivors of Suicide. I went to at a couple different places. But you just got to be involved, and once I found this group, I was just it just fitted. And but there's a lot of, I've got friends that I asked and to be involved with this, and there's just no, can't do it. And I understand that, but for me, this is what worked for me.
So what was it about that connection that worked for you?
The grievance or this connection with the group.
Yes.
I think because they had been there, and the other connection with the group, and I've told them this, is that as the girls like Danielle and Ron and Chrissy, I look at those girls that are recovering, and I see my sons. I see,
You see hope.
every time I look at Danielle or Rhonda or Chrissy, I see what could have been. But it just didn't work out. So that's what brings me back. And I tell people all the time when I talk, I said, I have never been surrounded by so many spiritual women and women that are just they're there for you, and they've been there, and it's just it was a fit, and it's worked out well.
When I found out my son was actively using, I sought help for myself, and I'll never forget that, we talked about grief, and the grief actually starts the moment you realize the drugs have a hold on your child. That child, for a period of time, or person, it doesn't necessarily need to be child, but that person is lost to you. You've lost that person as you know them, the moment the drugs take over their life. And I then sought help through support groups, and a friend of mine, Betsy, who's not here today, a couple of us older ladies, started Solace many years ago. Solace will be about 3 years old this July. And no more did we, whether our child was actively using, some of us had lost children, whatever your loss was, whatever you were grieving, we didn't have to do it alone anymore. And we understood one another, and we've come together to try to hopefully make something good come out of something so horribly bad. And these young girls in our group are phenomenal. They're making such a difference in other young people in recovery's lives. It's huge, and it perhaps gives us some sense of why this has happened and what are we to learn from it and where are we to go with it. But the one thing we've learned, we're not to do this alone, and that's where Solace has filled a huge need in my heart and my life.
And that there's hope.
And there's hope.
There is hope.
But you guys help us too, because you help us to understand, what it's like for parents, what our parents went through, what we put our parents through, to see what would happen if, God forbid, something happened to one of us. We learn from you guys just as much as you learn from us. So that's why it all fits together.
Fits together, doesn't it?
And I think it's an understanding too, because no one can tell you how to grieve. People can be supportive, and they can give you, ideas and different things. But at the end of the day, I think everybody grieves their own way, and I think you have to be, even like in a marriage. And we talked the other day, and Ron and I've been married for 24 years, and through that time, we have known other families that have lost children, and none of those couples are still together. And we talked about this before, because when you have a child that's going through this, at some point you just have to start preparing yourself, because you know that this isn't going to end well. You just know it isn't. And we had those conversations at different times, and and I don't want that to happen to us. So I think even in a marriage, the grieving part of it is you have to be so unselfish and so understanding and so accommodating for each other, because you just have to let things go, and you just have to let each other be how you have to be. And then and then we have 3 other children, so it's a roller coaster, and it's hard to understand how to go back and forth, and be there for each other and be there for the kids, and it's
I think for
hard.
men, and probably women too, I mean, from an early age, you're taught, what are you crying about? You know, it'll be all right. Everything will be all right. Put your mind on your work and, buckle down. You'll get over it. And it's pushed into a closet where you don't get over it. And it can manifest itself in other ways that you just don't ever think about it. So at an early age, you're taught not to deal with grief, not to deal with it.
What's learning a new normal? Nothing is the same. Nothing will ever be as it was, no matter how hard you try. So it's learning a new normal, and it's changing the way that holidays and everything that you do. It's one of my big things right now is family pictures. I don't want them taken.
Right.
Maybe someday, but
There's a saying that energy never disappears. The form of a person, their energy never disappears, it just changes form.
when I pulled in out here today, I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, and I happened to look up because my car is facing the tree. And I look up, and there's a cardinal sitting right on the tree, looking right down in the car at me, and I'm like, you're gonna laugh at me today, aren't you? Yeah.
And it destroys families, because not only did I lose my husband, almost a year after that, it was the June after I lost my husband, my aunt and uncle, I lost my little cousin, DJ. He was only 22 years old. And it was my aunt and uncle's only son. And he died of an overdose in his car, the street over from their house. And it has changed. His death has impacted my dad's side of the family so much that we don't have Christmas. We don't have Easter. We don't have none of that anymore since he died, because it's just so hard for my grandma, for my aunts and uncles, for my aunt and uncle that lost their son because that was their only child. And my aunt said, they don't have any grandkids. They'll never see him get married. They just feel like he was there and then he was never there. And they grieve totally different. Like my Aunt Laura, she makes mirages. She has all this stuff. And then my Uncle Darren, he doesn't talk about it at all. They grieve in two totally different ways. But somehow it manages to work for them, because he lets her grieve her way and she lets him grieve his way. But it impacts it don't just impact you, it impacts your whole family.
And sometimes dreams and things are things that bring comfort, or if the dreams don't happen or some connection doesn't happen, there's a sense of, where am I in this? Where
I think it affects more than just family, though, too. I know in the very beginning, right after we lost Robbie, and we have amazing friends, amazing group of friends that are so caring. But you go, they'll invite you over for dinner, or, they do different things because they want to get you out of the house, which was great. And I'm glad that we went and did that. But for so long, you just feel like you're the one that everybody's looking at like, oh my gosh, they lost their kid. Oh my gosh,
What do I say to them?
What do I say? And it's like you kind of feel like you don't want to go anywhere, because you don't want your friend, you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable because you're there.
Right.
So I think,
Like you got a big red dot right in the middle of your forehead.
and so to me, it's like, if you have friends that have gone through this, to me, the most important thing that you can do is keep inviting them, keep bringing them, and keep talking about their child, in good ways and happy ways, because you do need to talk about it. And I think people are afraid to bring that up. They don't want to upset you, or they don't want to they want to have a good evening, and they don't want to cause you any pain, so they don't say anything or bring it up. They're afraid to. But I think it's important that you need to talk about them, and it's okay to bring it up and talk about them.
And what do you tell people, Donna?
Well, back to what Marcia was saying about the essence of, I think what you were saying, the spirit lives on in some dimension. I can't explain it. I feel like my son and I were extremely close, and I'm very grateful for that. So, because so many times when the disease of addiction in your family is at its worst, everybody's arguing and there's so much dissension. But we'd worked all through that, and so I still feel that my son is present with me. I can't explain it, but I feel his presence, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm grateful that we didn't have a bad goodbye.
Right.
I'm very thankful for that.
Right.
So,
We talked about that the other day about how that they're right here. You know, they are right here. I know soon after Bobby had passed away, it wasn't long at all. I was working down on the river, and I looked up a road, and I seen all three of I seen Ian, Matt was holding Ian, and Bobby, and they were just walking toward me, you know, and I see that. And living in the house where they were all raised and where they died was they're everywhere. You know, everything that I look, every corner that I look in, they're there. You know, and I think that's something special to hold on to. You know, that they are there. You know, at night when I say my prayers, you know, I talk to them, and you know, I tell Matt how Maddie's doing, and take care of her, and I tell Ian to take care of his dad and his uncle, and that everything's okay, you know, and they make it okay. Really, they do. But I'm a firm believer that they're right here. They're right here with us.
I used to talk to Kevin all the time. Even if I was having a bad day and mad at him, I'd be in my car, and I thought, people probably think I am a lunatic because I'm like in my car screaming and crying, and I'm, you know, like yelling at him, and he's really not there, but he is there, but he isn't, and I'm thinking these people probably think I am a complete nutball. People driving next to me because I'm like crying and screaming, and I'm like, yeah, they probably think I'm a lunatic. And that's why your friends sometimes, it's like they'll call right after the funeral, and then they just like stop calling because they don't know what to say. And that's like what I always try and tell people, you don't even really have to say anything.
Just listen.
Yeah. Just listen. Just be there. Because I've had numerous people like ask me that, like after Kevin died, and then other people, I'm like, you don't have to do anything for them. Just listen. Just be normal. Just be their friend. Don't act weird.
You
just
learn
be
that
normal.
You learn that in that grieving program too. That because when we break up into groups, and you're not allowed to comment, you sit there and listen, and you listen. You don't ask any questions. You just listen. And I think that's real important for people to listen. And that's a good thing about our group, and is that, you know, we can share anything, you know, and it don't go any further, you know, and we can share anything, and you do need people just to listen.
and people that understand.
Right.
So my friend Cassie just lost her sister this week. Her sister committed suicide, and that's her second sibling she's lost. And I think her brother died in 2001. Then her sister just died this week. And that's what she was used to talking to her sister every day, and she was really close to her brother. So that's why, like, I try and call her every day. I don't necessarily talk to her about Jessica, but I just call her just to talk to her, just because I know that she's now has that void from where she was used to talking to Jessica, and she has nobody to talk to. Like she can't call her sister anymore. So I I just call and just talk to her. Even if it's about something so stupid, I just want to call and talk to her just to know that she's okay. Just so she feels like she has somebody and she's just not alone.
Well, Donna, and this is what Donna's saying is that we're all members of a club that we
Don't want to be in.
we don't want to be
Yeah,
in,
I'd like to resign.
and we are. You know.
Yeah.
You've all told me that this experience has completely changed your views of what's important.
Yeah, very much so. The same old things that seem so important, and you know, you have to do this or you have to do that. And it's changed a lot personally. It's changed a lot in my business. It's changed. You just see, you pick your battles, and you realize what's important and what priority is, and just how insignificant some things really are.
What I think too is when you go through something like this, you really realize, I mean, you've been faced with how quickly things can change in your life. It can change in the snap of your fingers, and your whole life be totally different. And it's scary. And we go about our daily lives and we do our rituals and same things over and over, not even thinking that these kind of things will happen to us. But when it does, you realize how precious life is, how precious your family is. The beauty of a sunny day, the green grass, the trees are greener, the wind blowing through your hair feels nicer. I mean, everything is enhanced, I'd say. Your senses are more enhanced. And you take nothing for granted.
No, not at all. I know that it really changed things for me. I mean, it just it slowed me down and makes me look at things in a totally different way. You know, I know it's really brought my daughter and myself a lot closer. It's I feel, you know, I'll drive past a funeral home and I'll see people, you know, coming out of the funeral, and I just feel for them, and I don't take, you know, I used to listen to the news, and every day, you know, you hear something on the news, and I really feel for those people that these things are happening to, you know, and but the beauty in every day, I mean, you just wake up, and so you wake up in the morning and you either decide to find the beauty in that day, or you could crawl back in bed and just lay there all day. And so for myself, I just try to find the good in every day, and I try to, you know, I don't judge people like I used to do, you know, because we all have our problems.
Danielle, you had mentioned Facebook, that your husband's mother found out about him on Facebook.
That's how we all found out.
And then for those people that have passed away, their Facebook still exists. So that can cause some issues.
On my son's Facebook page, it's got him sitting in a truck holding a pistol. And I just didn't know until just the other day that you could get rid of. I thought Facebook was forever. I didn't know that you can actually, you know, I guess you got to jump through some hoops to do it.
They started a thing where you can, tell them like the person passed away and stuff.
Right.
But that when Kevin died, they didn't have that yet. But luckily, I knew his password and all of his stuff, so I actually turned it into his and Kendall's Facebook. But for a while, I deleted mine and his because people, that was not what they should have done before they even knew if his mother knew.
Right.
The people that were there with him are the ones that put it on Facebook. That should have never happened. They should have never took it upon themselves to be like, we're going to go ahead and put that he died and this without even knowing if his family knew, knowing if anybody knew. You just, I don't ever do that. If somebody passed away, I never write on their page or anything until, I know that, a couple days later. Like, a couple hours later, absolutely not. You should not do that. You don't know who, maybe they haven't had time to tell other people in their family. It's just a respect thing. I had people say horrible things to me on Facebook.
Well, that was one of our concerns on the morning that Robbie was found. Was our daughter was in Knoxville, Tennessee, at my cousin's home, and I know the first thing that she does in the morning is she gets up and she looks on Facebook, and that was my biggest fear, was that somebody was going to put it on Facebook and Jesse was going to see it. So my cousin snuck into the room where she and her cousins were sleeping and took her phone and turned it off and put it up on the refrigerator so she couldn't find it until she woke up and we had it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, because, there are just people who just do not know how to use Facebook appropriately, and
It is.
that's just what they do. And we had our son shut down because someone was abusing it. If you can turn it into a memorial page, which we started one for him for memorial page, then that's great. But
People say nasty things. They call them, just another waste of life. I mean, I had people say horrible things, and I got to the point where I read, like, do you know that my son is, old enough to get on here? He was 13 at the time. He can see this stuff, Kendall can read. She's, she absolutely can read. She can see things. Like, there's just certain things that you should not do. It's called respect. Have respect for people. And, I don't care if that's what you think it is. If you think it was a waste of life, if you think this, or just want to say, oh, there's another one lost to heroin, inappropriate. It's called have morals, have respect. Like, Facebook, that really just made me think twice about things on Facebook and, like, what I put on Facebook and what I should put on there and what I shouldn't put on there. And finding out that your loved one died through Facebook is a horrible way to find out.
No doubt.
Shifting gears a little bit, we have talked about this over and over, that when you're caught in this addiction, just train wreck. Jail can save lives. Being in jail can save lives. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think when they're incarcerated, basically you're protecting them from themselves. That's all you're doing. If there's no treatment involved, you're just nothing's going to change.
You're just prolonging.
Yeah. If they're not getting education and treatment along with being incarcerated, they're going to go in a drug addict and they're going to come out a drug addict and they're going to be right back at it.
A smarter drug addict.
Smarter drug addict.
Or
They'll probably be back at it within hours.
Or end up dying
Yes,
immediately
yes.
after coming out of jail.
So incarceration without treatment is a total failure and a
Right.
waste of taxpayers' money. It's been studied that taxpayers' money, it's less to provide treatment to someone than to incarcerate them. And we've learned incarceration doesn't work.
And just to keep it incarcerated, you're just repeating the cycle, and you're just costing more because if they never get treatment, then they're just they're going back. Keep repeating the same offenses. It just keeps costing you more money, as if you would just put them in there the first time, get them treatment too, then you're most likely not going to have a repeat offender over and over again. I mean,
Can you talk about medicated treatment? And there's methadone, there's Suboxone, there's Vivitrol.
My sons would go to methadone clinic in Lawrenceburg. They would leave at midnight and go and sleep in the parking lot. They did this for between them probably 2 years, and they would sleep in the parking lot at Lawrenceburg. So when the clinic opened at 6, they'd be first in line, then they could go to work. I've got my own opinions on methadone. I don't think it works. It's very expensive. They take you up. You know, they're supposed to and bring you down. They'll give you take homes. If something happens, they'll take away your take homes. They'll put you back on coming down every day. It's just it's a terrible thing. I don't know. That's just my
I
opinion
don't
of it.
think medicated treatment works unless you have treatment too. Unless you're going through treatment too. Like just the methadone clinic or just going to a Suboxone doctor.
They're
No.
they're not telling them
No.
nothing.
But like going to a place like Brightview, Northland, where you're going to groups and you have your doctor and you have a counselor, you have a case manager, you have people there to help you, and you're going to NA meetings, AA meetings, absolutely it can work then. But just going to the methadone clinic or going to a Suboxone doctor, I don't think that works, no.
No.
My experience has been with Suboxone and a little bit with Vivitrol. My son was on Suboxone well over a year, and whenever they tried to titrate him down, he would relapse. The other thing we experience with Suboxone, there's high potential for abuse. Some addicts sell it to get their heroin, and it's more easily manipulated. Again, I favor, as a nurse and as a parent who's lived this, I favor the drug Vivitrol. It's injected once a month. It's impossible to abuse it. When you quit taking it, then you have no withdrawal. With Suboxone, you do have withdrawal. That's the one reason that my son never could get off of Suboxone. So I favor Vivitrol for the fact that it reduces cravings. There's no mind-altering sensation. Young people in recovery that are on Vivitrol can go to sober living or recovery homes, and they are allowed in there. I think with this drug heroin, I think it's a beast of all of itself by itself, and I think they benefit with the ongoing support of recovery homes. If you take Suboxone, it's deemed to be a little bit mind-altering, and they are not allowed to live in sober living homes on Suboxone. Now, on that note, I don't want to down any treatment because one shoe doesn't fit all. But in my experience for long-term recovery and success with my son Ryan, he went on Vivitrol 3 months. He actively worked his recovery. Totally believe in the 12-step programs, NAAA, any and all support, and the ongoing support of recovery homes. That's what my son had success with until whatever happened that one night. I guess John Kasich once said, the addict as a community needs our sympathy because they walk around every day with the devil on their shoulder talking to them.
Right.
And the devil is the heroin.
And in our situation, I've said a million times that Robbie's problem wasn't his addiction as much as it was his broken heart. And to me, a lot of it, not in every case, but in a lot of cases, it's a mental health issue. There's a brokenness. There's something in there that's just, until you're able to strip away everything and find out what that broken piece is, and then work on fixing that, I don't think any amount of treatment is going to be successful in our situation.
That's the same. That's what Matt went through too. When he lost his son, it just took away everything from him. And back then, the treatment has come a long way. So back then, there really wasn't a lot of treatment, and he had already found that what pain pills do. So, yeah.
Yeah, they have to find out what's broken and what's making them reach out to feel better.
And I think
Why they're
also, I
reaching out
think
for the drugs.
these doctors need to be held accountable for, what they're prescribing people and what they're doing. That they need to be held accountable on what they're doing. And Vivitrol, how long is Vivitrol?
It's injectable. It's good
How long has it been around?
It's probably been around. It's been around a long time, but they just realized, it's my understanding over the last couple of years, that it's effective for heroin.
It was originally for alcohol.
alcoholism.
But it's about $1,200 a shot.
Well, no, now
For
Medicaid
30
pays for it.
Medicaid pays for it.
Yeah,
Medicaid pays for
Medicaid,
it.
as long as you're going through a treatment program or something, they will pay for it.
Which is new in Ohio
Mm-hmm.
with the Medicaid expansion.
But now you can't get on Medicaid if you're in jail, right?
No.
No.
Correct.
So you
But
gotta wait till
some
you're after
jails-
jail.
Some jails have a Vivitrol program now, I think, or they're giving
Well,
the
the
shots
one
to
in-
some inmates.
I think the one in Kent
Yeah.
County, and that's the one that they're really having a lot of success rate with, like 80%.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in the Vivitrol shot. I think it's better than any of them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Back to the prescriptions. So the concept of a physician treating pain was pushed by Purdue Pharma back in the 90s. And they kind of set the tone. We kind of have a tone here in our culture that you need to be pain-free. And here's a pill, OxyContin, that does it. They sold the idea to physicians that you can't get addicted to this if it's either treating a high level of pain or you use it as prescribed. And you just told me today, you in recovery, that in response to a disease problem that you have, a physical, an illness that you have, they're going to give her Percocet.
Yeah, they were
So-
trying to force it down my throat at Anderson Mercy. I was like, what? No, I don't want it. The nurse literally asked Joey. I told the nurse at least 6 times, I don't want it. I got ibuprofen. I'm okay. And she repeatedly came back in there and tried to. She was like, "Are you sure you don't want this now? Are you sure?" I'm like, "No, I don't want it. I'm okay. Just I'll take my ibuprofen and go on about my business."
Or in the case of Ryan, having Vicodin prescribed for pain that was beyond what he needed. So when there's a place there where you're abusing drugs, but you're not addicted, and there's a point at which you become addicted, which means that you lose choices. You're not. It's not behavior anymore. It's your brain is changed.
It was explained to me, and I've taken a lot of classes on this. I mean, I went to every parent IOP program there's been. But it's explained to me that when you're taking pain pills, anything addictive, there's a point where the switch in your brain will flip. At that point, the brain becomes actually broken and damaged. And the prefrontal cortex, which is your desire factor, feel good factor, it takes over. And like in your mind, when you're about to do something you shouldn't do and that little voice says stop, that stop mechanism's turned off. It's in the brain, it's all go, 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 go. And it's documented in MRI scans of the difference in the brain waves and pictures of people addicted versus those that are not. So it's a documented disease, but it's little understood, unfortunately.
So we've talked about people that have lost a family member or a child. They've learned more about heroin after the death than they ever were aware of or were exposed to before.
Yeah, we did. That's one of the reasons why we started Brave Choices, was because after Robbie passed away, I started going to some different meetings and learned how heroin actually worked. I didn't know it changed the brain. I didn't know it physically changed the chemical makeup of the brain. And you look at your kid and say, just stop, just put it down and walk away from it, not knowing that he wasn't physically capable of doing that. So yeah, we've learned a lot more, and wish that we knew then what we know now. It may not have changed our outcome, but that's one of the things that we're doing with our organization, is trying to make sure that parents are aware of these things and they understand how this works, and the other family members, just so they understand what they're dealing with, and that they can work with them being more educated and understanding more.
And it's you physically, I mean, you want to stop. I mean, there have been times where I've been in my car literally just crying my eyes out, just begging God, like, please, why can't I just stop? Why is this, why? Why do I have to do this? And it's like your brain really tells you, like, you need it. Your body physically needs it. Like, as bad as I didn't want to do it, it's like I felt like I had to.
The dependency. That's
Yeah.
what I didn't understand. I didn't understand the dependency that had
Like
grown.
the fear of being sick, you get this mental state where you're just so afraid of going through withdrawal that even though, like, I mean, withdrawal is bad, but it's manageable. But you get so psychologically distorted, like you think that is like the worst thing that's ever going to happen to you, and you are so scared of it that you feel like you have to. It's like you have to do it, and even if you've been clean, like there's just like certain things that'll just bam switch just like that, just trigger you, and you'll like tell yourself like you've been clean for this long time, you know what's gonna happen, but you're still just so it's still mentally, and you think of like the first time, like how good you felt and how great it was, and even though you know what's going to follow, you know the mess that's going to come afterwards, or there's a possibility you could die, but it's like your brain just says you just don't. Once it's there, once that thought's there, and I mean a lot of times you can replace it, but sometimes you just can't, and you just go, and once you got it in your mind that you're doing it and you're going to do it, that's it. There's no changing it. Like I've tried as hard as I can to decide no, I'm not doing this, but and like feel horrible about myself and be crying and begging myself to like, just turn around, sitting there with a needle in my arm, like why am I doing this? And you literally just it's that strong that you just can't.
The damaged brain has lost the ability to produce the endorphins that you need. You've lost the decision-making ability in the frontal
It's like
cortex, and it's
like
not a choice anymore, and it's not a moral issue. Addiction is a place you get to that you're not in a position to make choices anymore.
I mean, I'm sure my sons never thought about stealing their grandmother's wedding rings and hawking everything that they had and falsifying documents so they can drain your bank account or just everything that they've ever done. All the terrible things that you just can't imagine that your own kids would do for the drug, and it's just
It shows you the hold that drug
right,
has on them.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we get so people judge us. We feel like we're this addict and nobody loves us, and people are mean to you because they think you're a junkie. Even it's like your family members they're not trying to be mean to you, but you just feel like you're worthless, and that's has a lot to do with it, because once you're past that point, then you just use just to cover that up, and you just keep going and going, and it's just
The addiction is ugly, for sure.
but
the addiction is, if you look at it as a disease, as we were saying earlier, so we've had people driving erratically in their cars. If you were having a heart attack and you ended up driving in the median of the highway, you would not get arrested. You would get taken to a hospital and helped. And while the addiction is ugly, it's a disease that needs to be treated. And
it's a chronic disease.
And
it
it is
needs
a-
to be treated throughout the remainder of their life. It never goes away. It's only managed.
well, in closing, let's start with Danielle and just kind of go, what advice would you give to parents who have either lost someone to heroin or are trying to help them recover from an addiction to heroin?
I mean, my thing is just, you don't have to enable me. I'm not, I'm not saying go give them money and stuff, but just still love them. Just let them know that they're loved, and I'm not saying like you have to go, like hand them $60 or hand them whatever, but just, like that was just like my biggest thing was needing to feel loved. And that's just like, that's why that's probably one of my downfalls with trying to help people, because I will, bend over backwards for people, and I get too attached, and I love them regardless of what they do. I love them so much. Like, that's the difference between me and a lot of other people, and that's why I find myself in messes, because I will continue to try and help somebody until, it kills me. I don't know.
Gosh, as a parent, I would say learn all that you can. Stop saying not my kid, because it is your kid. It can be your kid. Whether you know it or not, they're good at hiding it. Learn all that you can. Learn to understand what the signs are. Learn how it works. Learn how get help for yourself. Take care of yourself first. From our experience, I would say that if you're in this situation with your child and they come home from rehab, 28 days is nothing. 30, 60, 90 days is nothing. They need to be in a program 18 to 24 months at least to give their brain time to heal. They need to know that you love them unconditionally, that you're there for them. You need to set boundaries, healthy boundaries, and hold them accountable. But when you bring them home, the last thing that you need to do is bring up the past and throw all the horrible things that they've done in their face, because they know what they've done, and they don't need you or anyone else to remind them. They know what they've done. But when they come home, that day is a new day, and healing needs to start that day.
As far as advice to parents that maybe suspect something's wrong, what I learned is, my feeling is that if you think something's wrong, it probably is wrong. Something is wrong, and look into it. I myself do not believe marijuana is a benign drug. It's much stronger than the baby boomer days. And anytime they're using a substance to cover up feelings, there's a pretty deep problem, and you better pursue it, or you're going to have the big problems later on. Do not think, not my kid, because we all thought not my kid. None of us thought. And the sooner you get on it, the better outcome you're going to have. As far as parents who have lost a child, you got two choices. You lay down and die, or you pick yourself up and find a good support group. Try to make a difference in this epidemic. Our group is not only support, but working to be part of the solution of the heroin epidemic, and helping young people recover, finding them placement in recovery homes, treatment centers, whatever their need, meeting them where they're at, and assisting the needs that they have at the moment. There's a lot of reward in that, and the Solace family of mine, I couldn't have done it without them. I would not have made this journey, losing my son, without these loving people around me. And I just say, get out of the house, get involved, and make a difference.
You think about, I wish I would have known then what I know now, and I think it's all about education, and because I didn't know nothing. I don't, if I didn't choose to know it, or but just learn everything you can and get support and talk about it, and find somebody that you can share with and don't forget them. I mean, especially parents that have lost their children. Just don't forget them. I tell people that my son's lives were like a ruler, 12 inches long, and 11 3/4 of the life was great, but a quarter of that life was crap. And don't just think about that quarter. Think about the other part of it, because they're great human beings. They really were. They did a lot, and just know that there is life after recovery. Life after heroin. There is definitely, and just get support. Talk to your friends.
Want to go through the cards? Do you want to end it there?
Let's talk a little bit about gratitude. What myself, in my journey, there's good things that have come out of this. My son, I was able to learn how strong he was. He went through the darkest of darkness. He fought very hard to get back to being himself. I'm very grateful. My son found himself again. He found his smile. He found his leadership abilities. He found his hope. He had dreams. He was helping others. And I could not be more proud of him, because he emerged through this journey strong. And he came out the other side, I'd say, a better man. And I'm very grateful to God that He gave me these 20 months and 14 days to allow my son to become the man He intended him to be. And I have a lot of gratitude for that.
I think it's important to find those little blessings like that, because I know when Robbie died, there were little bits and pieces of things. He came home that Saturday night, and he was at our house all day Sunday and all day Monday, and he was Robbie again. He was his joking and that goofy laugh that is known around the world, I think, because he had the funniest laugh. But I find little blessings in that. And when his youth minister was getting ready for his funeral, we were talking about some things, and I went to the house to look for something, and I found something that I'd had from, like, I don't know, 4th or 5th grade, when they did those little cards that they put their little clippings of their hair in and their fingerprint. I still have all that. So it's kind of neat.
Every time I look into my granddaughter's eyes, I see my son, and I see her Uncle Bobby, and I'm so grateful for that her goofy little faces that she makes. Matt was just such a clown, and Bobby too, that when I am grateful for that, and I'm just
It's those little moments though when you see
right.
them. When you see them, like Jessie will give me a look, or she'll do something, and I'm like, oh, there's Robbie. And
Right.
I'm just grateful that they left a piece of them here. Like, that's what I'm grateful that Kevin, gave me Kendall. That I have her. She looks just like him. And that she got to spend, she didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, but the time that she got to spend with him. Because
Right.
even though he was using and stuff, he would religiously call her
Right.
every day,
Right.
every night, tell her he loved her. He spent a lot of time with her, even using. No matter what, he would call her religiously and tell her good night and tell her he loved her every night. So I'm grateful that he did do that. Even though he was using, that he still kept in contact with her and was a huge part of her life. It just makes and that I have her, and that she's here, and I just love her to death.
I don't have a closing statement there.
Well, I think to sum it up as what I'd like to say is people can get well and they do get well. Recovery is possible. It's going to take a lot of resources. It's going to take a village. Never in my life have I experienced such an epidemic as this, destroying so many lives, so many families, so many communities, and the potential, as Marcia said, to wipe out a whole generation. And, we talk about the Zika virus, we talk about Ebola. Well, this heroin epidemic is here. It's real. And people are dying every day. And whether you have a loved one who's affected or you don't, it does affect you. It affects the community in which you live. It affects the safety and well-being of your home and your family. And it affects our country. And so we have to unite as a community, as a country, and get organized and fight this. And we have to win. This is a battle we have to win.
And recovery is hard. It's not easy. It's hard. And, we might get it, and then we might fall. And we might fall 1,000 times, but, we get back up and we keep trying.
Right, relapse is part of recovery. So
And, you don't always have to fall. It doesn't have to be part of it, but, a lot of, it is a lot of times, but, we might not get it the first time, second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, sixth time. It might take 1,000,000 times, but we keep trying. We get back up and we keep trying. And it's not easy. It's very hard.
And if I could just add at the end, we need a community and we need funding. The budgets have been hacked on all of the resources for treatment, sober living, detox centers, and that needs to be restored and grown to meet the need, because we're not going to get out of this without treatment that costs money.